The world of theater is full of stars. But just like in the night sky, sometimes we don't see them all. Some are in the wings, some are maybe up over us in the catwalk. Hopefully they're not under the stage, but you never know. In this series, we are going to meet those hidden stars of the theater, hear their stories, and be inspired by them. So join me on this journey here in my state-of-the-art production studio in my backyard as we meet the hidden stars of theater.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Hidden Stars of Theater. As always, it's great to have you here in my camper in my backyard just to hang out and meet some really cool people who do some of the jobs in the theater world that we don't necessarily always hear about or think about, although they're just as important as any other position in making the magic happen and all of the things that we love when it comes to musical theater. And today, our hidden star is no different. That is Renee Levine. And Renee is an A2. If you've been watching, you know that an A2 is in the audio team and does most of the kind of backstage type of things. And so she's going to be a little different because most everyone we've talked to so far has been primarily on touring. And although she has toured some, most recently, she's been working on Broadway in kind of a unique way that we'll be hearing about directly from Renee. So before, though, we get to that, we have a featured school of the day, and that is East Forsyth High School from Kernersville, North Carolina, under the direction of Tiffany Burgess, and they sent us some incredible show shots. So before we get to Renee, which we want to do here pretty quick, we're going to look at those and celebrate what they did this year. So why wait? Let's get right to it. Let's roll those show shots.
Hi Eagles, Birch here, and I just wanted to take a minute to say I know this year didn't turn out like the way we had hoped or the way we had planned, but I just wanted to let you know I'm exceptionally proud of all of you, the way you have persevered and pushed through this whole situation. And to our seniors, you will be greatly missed. I am proud of your work, I am proud of your accomplishments, and I cannot wait to see all the wonderful things you guys do in the future. Love you all. And next year, we'll get back at it, and it'll be a great year. Take care. Love you.
All right, folks, we are back. Hope you enjoyed those show shots from our feature school. We are here today with Renee Levine. Renee is our star of the day, and Renee is going to teach us all about specifically what it means to be an A2 in the theater world. And I know we've heard from Mike Ruckstad in the past about being an audio engineer, and he's an A2 right now, but most of the time he's an A1, so he kind of talked to us more about that. So I'm interested to find out one of the other roles within that team in a little more depth. But what I'm really excited to hear is about Renee's story, because that's what makes us all unique. So Renee, welcome to the Hidden Stars of Theater. It is great to have you today.
Thank you.
You bet. Absolutely. And so there's no reason to delay. Let's get right into it. And as always, what we want to start with is just getting to know you. We really want to hear your story, because that's where, we get to learn what is it that has you doing what you're doing, and what was the drive to get you here, and what things influenced you, because that helps us know if this is something we want to do. What are some things that we can do to find success? Because obviously you have found success because you're a star. You're a star. So we would just love to hear your story. If you want to start at the beginning and just talk about people who maybe influenced you some, or things that you did that really helped shape you and get you into what you needed to be to do what you do. So I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you go for a little bit here and tell us all about Renee Levine.
Okay. So my parents are from New York. They're born and raised in New York. And then for a job, they moved to California, which is where I was born and raised and went to high school and everything. I danced for a really long time, since I was 5. And then I worked with a community theater group in Fresno, California called Good Company Players, and they had a really excellent children's training program. And that's where I learned all kinds of things, like early is on time, like basic discipline of theater.
Yeah. Yep. Kind of
Um,
cut your teeth there in theater. That's cool.
Exactly. And then from there, I went to a performing arts high school, Roosevelt School of the Arts in Fresno, California. And both of these, the high school and the community theater, like Audra McDonald's an alumni and people like that.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty legit.
It's legit. That's great.
Yeah. And then I went to college for theater in New York because most of my family is still living in New York and I wanted to be closer to them. And New York is more of the theater kind of center of the country.
Yeah.
So
I've heard that.
Yeah, so I went to State University of New York at New Paltz, which is about an hour and a half north of the city. And I mostly did a lot of dance and choreography and things like that.
Okay.
And then everybody has to do a certain amount of tech credits towards your degree. So I was like assistant choreographing the musical company, and they needed someone to mix the musical, which I think Mike covered pretty much what that is. And they asked me to do it because they thought that I could be at the console in the back of the house mixing and also watching and taking dance notes. So they thought that would be a good combination. And
you have a lot of experience doing that?
No, zero. Like I didn't, I was like, what?
Yeah. So thrown into the fire. Hey, this is a sound board. Have fun.
I mean, yeah, that's basically what it was. Like our school didn't even have a sound professor at the time. Now they have a wonderful sound professor, but they didn't in like 2008, I guess, 2007. This was. So we had a guy though who would come and rent us equipment. So he kind of like got me a little stool because I was too short to see over the console. And he was like, here, stand on this, push the fader up when they talk, pull it down when they don't talk. I gotta go. So that was kind of how that went. But that's when I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, this is such a cool way to like affect the audience without them even being like knowing that they're being affected. And I thought that was so cool. So then I really started going more like studying more sound and being more interested in audio for theater. And because we didn't have any sound, like a professor, anybody who really to guide me, the costume professor, Andrea Vargas, she was like, you should go do internships over the summer theater internships. And then you can kind of come back and just sort of apply it. And we'll let you sound design the college plays and musicals. So that's what I did. I did summer internships at Adirondack Theater Festival, Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival, and then I also did a Park Playhouse in Albany. So I basically was just learning over the summer all that I could, and then trying to apply it the next semester. And that was kind of how I learned, really. And, there wasn't really a formal audio training because they didn't have it. Right. But I felt like I had freedom to make mistakes or just spend as long as I needed just trying to figure it out myself. So I think there's value in just sort of playing around and seeing if you can do it and what you can come up with.
Absolutely. Yeah. What is the summer stock situation at each of those different places? Were there more professional sound engineers there who
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So I was able to, well, the first one that I did, it was this grad student. He was like a grad student studying sound design. So he was kind of like in school already. So he was able to teach me a lot, just kind of like, this is what I'm learning in school. And he was like, here's how to solder. And I was like, what? Like, just really.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was more formal,
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And then you got to apply that, take that back to the school and teach others, which is cool.
and kind of just did my best with that. The big deal was when we finally the tech director finally was like, okay, we got SFX. Like we bought a subscription to SFX.
Nice.
We need to figure out how it works because, you know.
Yep. Yep.
So
Absolutely.
kind of messing around with that, and then there was a couple more kids that got interested in audio, and now there's a wonderful sound professor who like associate sound designs off on Broadway and everything. So she's
wow.
amazing. So now it's probably like a worthwhile state school to go to if you're interested in audio. And then after I graduated college, I got a job traveling with the Big Apple Circus, and I really just got that job it was like on offstagejobs.com. They just needed a sound assistant, and I showed up and I was willing to do it. So they were like, okay, cool, you can have the job if you think you can handle it. Yeah. So like the sound assistant, my job was pretty much just so there was the A1 that mixed, just like Mike said. And then as the A2, because it's a circus, it was mostly like the band, and that's what you were in charge of, is like touring this band. And there's a couple microphones, like the ringmaster and some clowns and stuff, but it was mostly just about the band. So I really learned how to tour and, you know, hang speakers and pack them up and pack a truck and dealing with long hours and chain of command. Chain of command is something that I really learned at the circus too, which I think is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So after that,
and you're talking a legit old school circus, big top, everything, right? Not some show called the circus. It was a circus,
right? Yeah, it was. Yeah, like big top tent. I lived in a fifth of a semi truck trailer with like a bunk bed kind of situation. Yeah, it was definitely yeah. I mean, I was 22 at the time, and I don't think, you know, that I could do that again. Well, I'm 32 now. Yeah, so it was 10 years ago. I don't think I could go back and work at the circus again. But it was definitely an excellent way to really like just, I guess, really understanding hard work, like actually like earning your stripes. And it's funny because now I talk to a couple Broadway stagehands who are like, I traveled with Big Apple Circus in 1983 or whatever. And everyone's always like, oh, that's a hard job. And it is. But, you know, once again, it's also a really good place to like learn and sort of, you know, make mistakes if you have to. Yeah,
well,
so I was,
and probably a great way to find out whether you like touring, right? Because
yeah.
I mean that's definitely touring, and it's probably you know, as opposed to touring with an equity show or a Broadway show, probably even harder, I would imagine, living conditions.
Oh, yeah. And personalities, right? Because there are all kinds of personalities at the circus. And so that was super monumental, I think, in me being able to learn how to deal with people from all walks of life, like people who are like third generation circus, who work with elephants and like grew up their whole life on like the Ringling train, or people who are, you know, like I even got to meet like the ninth generation Walinda, you know, like all kinds of crazy cool. People. Yeah, but then also, you know, circus workers, like people who've been to jail, like just all kinds of, just all walks of life. And I think that has served me well in my career, because I don't want to say I'm not surprised by anything, but I definitely am not one to, like, I'll never judge you right away, because, you know, I've already worked with all kinds of legitimately crazy people. So yeah. I guess that sounded judgmental.
I personally appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, very good. So after the circus, then how long did you tour there, and what was next?
Yeah. So I did about 2 years there. And then, so the circus used to travel all over the kind of like the Northeast coast. Like we would do Boston and Washington, D.C. And we always had a big sit down in Lincoln Center in New York City. And we did a ticket exchange with Annie on Broadway. I guess they were probably like, you know, 2 kid shows. Let's trade some tickets. So I went to see Annie. And at that point, I was kind of feeling like I had kind of learned everything there was to really learn from the circus. So I was kind of looking to move on. And my dream was to do theater. My whole life, I've wanted to work in theater.
Yep.
So I kind of just went up to the guy at the console who was mixing the musical. And I just walked up to him at intermission and I was like, "Hi, I'm Renee. I work for Big Apple Circus. How can I do what you do? How can I do what you're doing?" And he just looked at me and he was like, "Okay, oh, I'm Shannon. Do you want a book?" And I was like, "Okay, that's not what I thought he was gonna say." And he gave me his book, which was Mixing a Broadway Musical. And I looked at it and I was like, "Oh, did you write this? Are you Shannon Slayton?" And he was like, "Yes." And I was like, "Oh, will you sign it?" So he signed it, and then he gave me his email address and was like, "Look me up when you get out of the circus."
So this is the same Shannon Slayton that we've heard before.
Yes.
Episode 3, I think, with Mike Ruckstad, huh?
Yeah. Yes. Everyone's very godmother.
The famous Shannon Slayton. That's great, man. Talk about someone who has been influential in this industry, in your discipline.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's cool.
Absolutely. So when I finally left the circus and I was like, I'm just looking to move up kind of, or just away from the things that I felt like I had already learned. I sent him an email, and among some other little just projects around town, he was like, "Do you want a tour? Do you think you can handle it? Do you think you would be okay touring a Broadway show?" And I remember saying something like, "Well, it's inside, right? Because the circus, you show up to a lot full of rocks or mud or whatever, and you're pushing road cases over this stuff." And Shannon was like, "Okay, good point. Yeah, you can have the job. Like, well, see how you do." So he gave me my first union Broadway tour, which was Elf, the musical.
Nice.
And then from there, I did a whole bunch of all kinds of tours. I toured like a one-nighter Hello Dolly with Sally Struthers. I toured like We Will Rock You and like Matilda. Like I did all different kinds of things, including Bullets Over Broadway with many of the amazing people that you've been interviewing.
Absolutely. That's another common thread, which is great.
Yeah, that was such a great crew. Good peeps. So then after a while, I just felt like, so I guess I had started on my tour journey when I was 22, starting with the circus. And then by the time I was 30, I felt like I was like, I think I'm ready to just have a dog, like settle down in one place. And and New York was that place for me because that's where my family was, and that's where Broadway is, and let's try and do it. So in the middle of all of this, which is kind of weird to explain, but in the middle of all of this, I was asked to sub on Kinky Boots on Broadway. So what that means is whenever you get, so you have the A1 on a show, and then you have the A2. And then there's a period of time where the A2 has to train on the mix and learn it so that they can mix a couple of times a week. So when that happens, which it takes about 3 weeks to train an A2, you need to hire somebody to be the acting A2 backstage while that person can train. And then they become the sub. So whenever, someone's out or vacation or sick or something, you can pop in and run the backstage A2 track. So I did that at Kinky Boots in 2013 or 14, something like that. I was on a break in between tours over the summer.
Okay.
And I did that for them while they were training their new A2. And then every so often when I would come back from the road or have some time off, if they needed me, I would come in and sub and run their track for them. So when I was getting off the road, I emailed Shannon and I was like, hey, I'm back. Let me know if you have any, New York stuff. And he got me to do a similar gig, be the A2 on a Broadway play called Present Laughter. And from there, that's been sort of my gig in life. I've been in the city for about 2 to 3 years now, and I've subbed A2 tracks on maybe like 15 Broadway shows. I've done a whole something like that. Maybe that's an exaggeration. Maybe it's more like 10. Anyway,
That's a lot.
maybe that's too many Broadway shows.
So when you do sub, like if you sub a show, how often do you sub that same show? Is it like, do you find yourself stepping in every once a month, every 2 weeks, or is it any kind of a pattern at all?
No. I mean, it really depends how the main crew is. Like it depends if they really like want time off or it just depends. Or I think because getting a full-time job on Broadway is like, you kind of never know because shows close and open, and you there's no real way to predict how long a show can go, or when your next kind of job is. I feel like sometimes once people get a show, maybe there's a little bit of like, okay, I can relax and maybe take like a weekend off, because instead of that constant like hustle, because I don't have a job.
Right.
So, I guess. And then also people work during the day too. So if say you want to do like a load in during the day and you don't feel like doing your show at night or something, then you have your sub come in and do it. So, because really, I mean, in New York, you can just work right around the clock. Like you can have an 8 a.m. load in, work until 5, then go to your 5:30 call. If you want, you can, do your show. If you want, you can do some overnight changeover that's happening, like really you can just keep working around the clock. So sometimes I'll step in for people if they need a little break or something, but I've never felt like there's no stability being a sub. I've always felt like I've been in quite a bit, and I never felt like it was like, oh gosh, I need them to take time off, because there's always something to do. You can do a load in or whatever. So I don't think there's no job stability in being a sub, if that makes any sense.
Totally. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. And I guess for someone who likes kind of challenges and not necessarily doing the same thing over and over and over and over, that would be a pretty rewarding and fulfilling track.
Yeah, and I kind of I used to say I'm still on tour, even though I'm like in one city now. I'm doing different productions instead of like the same production in different cities, kind of.
And great for networking.
Yes, it is awesome for networking, because then you meet all different kinds of people, and then they can hire you for, the next thing or recommend you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Very good. And that kind of brings you up to where we are today, I guess. Is that right? Is there anything, or just kind of been stuck all the way through up until where we are?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Very good. Well, I'm gonna jump back a little bit and just pick a couple things out and ask you to kind of expand on them. One of those is, we always like to kind of see what are some skills from our past or your past that really played into what you do. And one of the things that you mentioned was dance, right? You were primarily involved in dance up until you were asked to do sound and realized that you loved it. Once you realized that that it was either more in your skill set or just something that you tended to enjoy more, was it difficult to make that decision because you'd invested so many years in dance?
Yeah. I remember calling my best friend from elementary school and being like, I'm going to make a career change. And I just remember her saying, Renee, that's what college is for. Like, oh, my dog just ran into the room.
That's great. This is your story and your life, so we can meet your dog if he wants to.
Oh yeah, come here, Latte. Yeah. That's Latte.
Hey, Latte. Latte's like, what are we doing? Mom, put me down.
Yeah, she's like, I want to play. Oh, thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, she just ran. Oh my gosh, I've never had that Zoom meeting before where I'm like, oh, my dog just ran in, and now it's happened. It has happened for real.
You're a star. What can we say? Stars and their pets, right?
Yeah, she's the real diva.
That's great. That's great. So you're right, and that's
Sorry.
exactly what we're supposed to do in college, right? We're supposed to explore
Yeah.
because you have all the responsibilities, and if you're going to change careers or you're going to find out you don't love one thing, it's better to do it when you're still in college than when you're after and kind of committed to that. So that's exactly a great point. Did you get pushback from faculty or parents or anyone?
No, they were so excited because, like I said, there wasn't really a sound professor at the time at my college. So everyone was so excited, like, great, you do it. So they were like really excited and encouraging of me, especially Andrea Varga and Chris Noble, the tech director. They were definitely the ones that were like, yes, go get internships, like figure this out, And I think that's actually a super legit skill, is just figuring it out for yourself, because a huge part of just a career in the arts in general is just figure it out for yourself. Like nobody is gonna make you show up on time, or nobody is gonna have all the time necessarily to teach you and know all the answers. So I think that just like learning on the fly is really, really valuable. I mean, formal training, of course, is super important, but the skill to think on your feet is incredibly important.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things the students that I work with, I tell them, because the reality is I'm not going to be with them all the time. And so what happens if something comes up and I'm not there to help them through it? They've got to figure it out, right?
That's so funny. I was just telling this to my brother. It was so funny because I was like, right, so if I'm backstage at a Broadway show, I'm not going to, and like the microphone breaks, I'm not going to like ask the teacher how to fix the microphone. Like there's no teacher, you gotta like be able to like think on your feet and like, how are we gonna do this? What do we have to fix this right now? So yeah, so I think it's valuable to have that kind of like, so they were very supportive of me moving into audio.
That's great. Summer stock, let me jump to that. So you were in several different summer stock places. Talk to us about how you found those, because I know several people have mentioned it. We've never really talked about how do you find those jobs? How aggressively did you go after? Are there some secrets to getting hired there that you would say if somebody knows these, it'll help them get those positions?
So I would say back when I mean, yes, like there's always like value to having connections and people who know people to hire you. I mean, that's just how the industry works. I think that's how all industries work, right? But when I was looking for internships in like 2007 and 8, I kind of was just like I felt like I was just throwing darts at a board, just like applying for a bunch of them and just seeing what I could get. I think our professors had access to like an artsearch.org or something like that, and just really job websites like playbill.com and offstage jobs, and that's how I was sort of doing it, or just looking up like Pennsylvania. When I got the Pennsylvania Shakespeare internship, I really was just like, I've never been to Pennsylvania before. I'm going to Google the theaters that are in Pennsylvania and email them and see if they have internship programs. So I think that's a cool way to do it too. If there's like a town that you just want to, because a lot of the time they'll provide housing for you because they don't pay you very much. So if they're going to like provide you housing to live somewhere, like why not go somewhere you've never been before?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. And I think, at the time, sound wasn't a super popular category of internships. So I think I just wanted to do it. And I think that was my kind of like success with getting the job. I just wanted to do it. And I was enthusiastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just kind of Googling randomly around. That's kind of how I got my internships.
Well, I mean, but we can say that, I was just doing that, but the reality is you were going for it. I mean, you took the time to
Yes,
do it,
I was
right?
proactive. Yes,
Yeah,
I
you
was
got to be
proactive.
put
Yeah.
yourself out there. That's great. So I
Yeah.
think kind of you mentioned it's important to know people, networking, and all of that. So I'm going to jump to this question about Shannon Slayton, right? And just how important do you think it is to get to be, would you use the word aggressive? Do you need to be aggressive in going after people? Because one of the things that you shared was that, you went straight back. You didn't even know who was
Yeah.
there. You went to the soundboard, you put yourself out there. You said, this is who I am, what I want to do. Mike Ruckstad, he was like Facebook stalked the guy and kept, calling and calling, whatever, because he saw the book and went after the man. And Shannon was open to that. Do you find that most people into the industry are open if you go to them and say, help me or give me advice?
100%. And you can look at examples of like, well, Shannon hired both of us, didn't he? And like when you reached out to us, like, do you want to talk to some students? We were like, absolutely, So I think, yes, I think people are receptive to that. If they're not receptive to it, then just move on to the next person. So I've been working in New York for a couple, like almost 3 years now. And really, how you are supposed to get a job, like if you want to help like load in the show that day, you're supposed to literally go to the stage door with your business card, ask to speak to the head electrician or the house carpenter or whichever department you are looking to get a job in, and you introduce yourself. You go to the stage door and you introduce yourself and you give them a business card, and that's how you get hired. So yeah, I mean, being proactive and going for it, because I've had a couple of head electricians say, well, how do I know you won't work if you don't tell me? So that's,
It's a very valid
point. Yeah, definitely. I mean,
they're not going to come looking for you.
Right. So, I mean, don't be like crazy and weird about it and text them every day, but like definitely go after it.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. That's good. That's very, very good. And I mean, if you want to work, go find a place to work, right? There's always something out there to do. Just find it. Go for it.
My friend Ian was like, someone's always going to want to hang lights somewhere.
Absolutely. So now we'll put your episode up, and after that, and Mike, I bet Shannon Slayton gets inundated with emails. First of all,
he's going
to expect a free book for one thing. Sorry, Shannon. No,
I know his phone number is. I'm just kidding.
How Never to Work Again by Renee Levine.
Oh yeah, that would be good.
Awesome, very good. So let's talk a little bit about when it was time to step out of the tour world, right? And come. I know you said you wanted a dog, which we met Latte. Latte's awesome. So you fulfilled that dream, which is great.
I did.
But how did you know that it was time? And were there things tied to Broadway specifically that you wanted to be there, and kind of some goals you'd set related to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to work on Broadway. It's the most exciting place to work, in my opinion. It's so much fun. Yeah, it's even. Can you believe it's even more exciting than like touring the Midwest?
I can't imagine.
Yeah, I've always wanted to be in theater. And New York is where my family is, so right. That all of that kind of fit for me. I mean, I have a lot of friends who moved to New York and they don't know any, like, Savannah's from Kansas, and that to me is super brave. She's just like, yeah, I'm gonna come out here and make it work, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm also going to my aunt's house for Passover, so right. I'm good. I have a really cool like family support network, but that's why New York for me was like kind of the no-brainer place to go. And yeah, so touring, I just I was just kind of, I felt similar to when I left the circus. I felt like I had sort of learned what I was going to learn, and there are only so many times you can tour Fort Wayne, Indiana, or even Chicago in the winter. Like there are just so many times you can, I mean, and some people love it and thrive off of it, and
Right.
that's amazing. But I had really always wanted to do the New York thing, as
Yeah,
some people say.
absolutely.
Like, yeah,
I get that.
yeah, I'd always wanted to do that. So I felt like I had kind of learned what I was going to learn, and then I felt like I was kind of like ready to go. And that's different for everyone. Like some people do like 2 tours and they're like, that's it, I'm good. Or some people just kind of like get their union card and they're like, great, now I'm going to try and work somewhere else. You know, everybody's journey is different, but I just sort of felt like I was, I just kind of felt like I was just done with that chapter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Talk to me a little bit about the union. I know that, when we've spoken before, that's something that you've got some passion about and that you think is important to you. And I know we've had others mention it when we interviewed them, but we never really dove into, a little bit of the history. What's it from? Why would somebody join the union? What are the benefits? So just take a few minutes maybe and give us a little bit of a teach-in too about the union.
Yeah, so the Stagehands Union is IATSE, and so I worked for the circus, and that was a non-union job. And then once I got my first union job, there's already just an amazing difference in the way that work is always hard, right? It's never easier, but there are things that they can do to compensate you. Like if you do end up working like overtime, then there's overtime pay. There's you get health care, you get retirement benefits, pension, so there are a ton of good reasons to join the union if you're a stagehand. And I would recommend, I know, for example, like equity, I know this is like a big personal decision for some people, like where do I get more work? Do I get work non-union, union? As a stagehand, like, oh man, I strongly feel if you have the opportunity to join the union, take it, because I honestly don't really feel that there's too much of a downside with joining the union and doing union work. If you live in a big union town like New York or Chicago or Pittsburgh or somewhere like that. So IATSE is sort of the umbrella, like that's the stagehands union. So then within IATSE, I hope this example makes sense. I used it with you yesterday, so I hope it makes sense to everybody else. But if you're in a fraternity, everyone's under this balloon of the fraternity, whichever one it is. And then you have different chapters, right? Which are the different colleges because you can be in the same fraternity, but you go to a different college. So you're a different chapter. So that's kind of how the union works. So there's IATSE, and then there'll be the different locals based off of where you live. So local 1 is New York.
Even like Boy Scouts, you got Boy Scouts of America, and then you have the different troops in different towns.
There you go. That's a way better example.
So yeah, that makes total sense. So you've got different chapters in different cities, and I would imagine even broken down to the different disciplines, right? Like you've got within that. Is that correct?
Yeah. So costumes and hair, those are different locals. And then the Stagehands Union sort of encompasses carpentry, props, electrics, and then lights and sound are under the umbrella of electrics. And then I hope I didn't miss anyone, because I'd feel bad about that. But wigs and wardrobe are kind of a separate local, depending on what city you're in.
Got you. And do I remember correct that New York City is local 1 because it's the first?
That's correct. Yep. They were the first.
That's great. So I bet there's a lot of pride around local 1, which there should be. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Union strong. But there are different. So each of the different locals has a different way to get in. I believe my friend who is a member of the Oklahoma City local, I believe it was a vote. They had to vote, just kind of vote him in, go to the meeting. And there are different ways to get in. Local 1, you have to work for 3 years in a row and make $37,500 consecutively 3 years in a row within their jurisdiction. So that just means like it just has to, you have to be on the local one payroll. And then
Gotcha. So 37.5 from in a local one job.
correct.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, and if you miss
get
a year
at McDonald's, it doesn't count.
Right. Even if it's next door to the Broadway theater, like the McDonald's next to the New Amsterdam, that does not count. Yeah. So
Gotcha.
yeah. And then not all jobs on Broadway are local one jobs. So you have to make sure that it's under local one like payroll so that you can add that to your money. And then if you miss a year, you have to start all over again. So it's 3 consecutive years.
Got you. And how are you doing in that?
Well, I'm in my 3rd year now. I was doing pretty good until the shutdown. So I don't know. Hopefully.
So if anyone from IATSE is listening right now, you should take total grace and mercy on Renee and just let her in because she would have done it. It's not her fault with the show. She totally would have done it.
I know me and a bunch of my friends are kind of in the same boat. Like I'm definitely not alone. So I've been having some talks with my friends. Like, hopefully they won't make us start all over. Hopefully we can just start next year.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we'll see.
Well, that's great. Well, so let's transition out a little bit more nuts and bolts. Now, when we talked to Mike Rickstad in episode 3, and if you're listening and you didn't watch that and you wonder what I'm talking about, go back and watch Mike in episode 3. He taught us some great things. But rather than have you kind of tell us what he did, which was all the different roles within the team, you can get in a little more depth in specifically A2, which is where the kind of the world you've been living in, and what is the day-to-day for an A2, both. I know that you're subbing, so I would imagine subbing, you're doing the same things. You just got to learn it much quicker, right?
Yeah.
But what does that world of an A2 look like specifically?
Yes. So, well, you are responsible for the backstage stuff, running the A2 track. So that means all of the radio frequencies, including the wireless microphones that the actors are wearing, and also the wireless comm that the stagehands are wearing to communicate. So you're responsible for all of that. You're also responsible for the band microphones, if something goes wrong. I was actually doing a show once where the violin player accidentally swapped the violin and the viola microphones, and so I had to so when they were playing, there was the wrong microphone, so I had to kind of run down in the pit and very quietly, because you can't talk into the microphone in the pit. I had to show the label, wrong microphone, and she was like, and then switched to
a great pantomime.
Yeah, so you're responsible for what's happening backstage, because the A1, of course, can't take their fingers off the desk. So you're responsible for that kind of stuff. And say an actor, this has happened so many times, like an actor gets sick in the middle of the show and they need to throw the understudy on really quick. So you need to be there to take care of that, make sure the correct microphone is on them so that the A1 can just do the show and not worry about it. So it's really just all of the crazy troubleshooting and, liaisoning with different departments backstage and everything like that.
So you are, even more so than the A1, dealing with individuals, right?
Yes.
People, knowing their tracks, knowing what they do, lots of different roles. You've got to kind of juggle all of those.
Yeah, and that's where I think meeting all those different people at the circus really definitely came into handy for me, because I met so many different kinds of personalities. So I'm able to pretty much I can almost deal with anything that gets thrown my way, any type of individual. So I think that's really important. Yeah, having positive people skills.
Yeah, and what about dance skills? Because it sounds to me like you're dancing a lot backstage, and it's got to be choreographed, doesn't it? Your movements, where you go next.
Backstage traffic and choreography is almost just as important. Sometimes, if there's a problem, honestly, the dressers are your best friend, I would say, as an A2. You want to become best friends with the dressers, because they're the person who, especially the star dressers, they know exactly where that person is standing and when and how. So if I'm subbing on a show and I'm not there every night and I don't know exactly what's going on and I have to fix a star's microphone, I always find the dresser and I'm like, when's the best time to fix this? And they're like, okay, they're going to come in. I'm going to pull their apron off. They get a drink of water. Go right after the drink of water or whatever it is. So it's very choreographed in when you can fix problems.
Because I would imagine if you get in there in the wrong place, you're probably going to annoy some people.
Yeah. And especially as the sub, you want to be asked back. You don't want to annoy anyone. So yeah, that's super important.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit then about your need for knowledge of different microphones. Is that true? I mean, especially as the sub, because you're bouncing from theater to theater, do they all pretty much do the same stuff, or is it different?
Yeah, pretty much. And that's actually what I think is really cool about being a sub, is because you get to see like everybody's different setup and how they organize things. I was joking with my friend Bridget, who I sub for a lot. I love taking pictures of her setup because I just think she has it so organized completely. And she jokes with me. She's like, "Oh yes, you have a Pinterest board for like microphones and stuff."
That's great.
But yeah, it's cool to see the different way that everybody has their different setup. But then of course the technology completely varies show to show, because you have to think every show is different, right? Like if you're doing a rock musical, you might want a boom mic right here. If you're doing a play that's very subtle, like the mics are like practically buried in the hair, so yeah, you have to keep up on all different kinds of stuff, all different kinds of technology, all different kinds of receivers and transmitters and different comm technology that's coming out. But just go ahead and ask questions, like they want you to get it, they don't want to get a phone call when they're supposed to be on vacation. Like, I don't understand how this works, like what's going on. So like ask the question, write it down. So it's pretty cool.
So I just thought of something. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. And if you're not comfortable answering it, don't answer it. But I know as a community theater director, producer, whatever, and that all, we've got a lot of different teachers. One of the questions that everybody has is, what would you recommend as a good, did you have a favorite lav mic or wireless mic system? Brand, model, whatever that you think, hey, this is my favorite. And if I was going to pick one, this is what I'd go with for a theater.
No, I don't have a favorite element because it's so subjective show by show. So I really think you got to look at the needs of the show. So I did a couple of years working with the New York Musical Theater Festival in New York, A2ing, and that whole show, like all the shows, the band is on stage with you. The band is on stage,
Wow,
so you really have to be like, because there's no room. It's like these very small theaters in the city. And so you really have to get just whatever microphone gets the closest to your mouth, because you literally have a band like on stage with you. So I would say I don't have a favorite element as far as, because the needs of the show really just tell you what kind of element you need, whether it's, Mickey 1s or 2s or, but I would say as far as transmitters go, the Sennheiser 5212s are pretty standard. But even that, like there's so many more evolving technologies now. No, you can't have a favorite. You have to love them all, right?
Good answer. Good PC answer. That's fair. That's good. And yeah, I did put you on the spot there a little bit, but it's just curious because I know that's something that a lot of people, I even get asked a lot, and I'm not an audio engineer by any means. People, what do you use?
Yeah.
What do you recommend? And that's good. Yeah, I know.
I mean, Shure and Sennheiser are generally like the two like main companies that kind of do most of the wireless microphones.
Totally. Very good. Well, I want to know, this is kind of the deep question time, right? And this is something that we ask everyone, but what is it, Renee, that gets you up in the morning? What makes you passionate, right? What is it that you love about this job that you're willing to do, whatever it takes, and to be that go-getter to do it? Because obviously something drives you. You love what you do. Can you kind of put that into words of what it is that fills you with the passion, the drive behind it?
Yeah, I think there's nothing cooler in the world than really affecting people without them knowing that they're being affected. I think that's so cool. I think like solving problems on the spot and the audience never knew. I mean, I feel like every like high school theater kid has that moment where they're like, oh, I forgot my line and I flubbed it and the audience never knew. And I think that's kind of what I get where I get my high and excitement and passion from is just, fixing a microphone on the fly or, just like the show ran smoothly and I sneak out the stage door and no one ever knows I was there. And that's kind of like where I get my passion and what I think is so cool.
Yeah, being so good at what you do that nobody knows you're doing what you do.
Yeah, that's the dream.
That's the dream, right? Yep. Because everybody says you never notice the sound man until something messes up with the sound. You want to be, what do we say? An audio ninja. Renee Levine, audio ninja.
Yeah.
I like it. That's great.
Yes, that's what I strive to be.
That's great. And I'm going to have you tell a story here that you told me, just because I think it's cool, about something that did kind of fulfill you when somebody recognized you one time, right? Out of the you were leaving the door and somebody stopped you. Remember? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was just leaving work from my stage door and this girl was like had her playbill and she was like, oh, can I have your autograph? And I was like, oh, microphones, like I just I wasn't in the show, I backstage. And she was like, no, can I have your autograph? I do sound at my school. And I was like, oh, like yeah, man, like that's cool. So I signed my name and I told her to keep it up because we usually make more money. So
there you go. That's great. Well, we're getting down to it here. We're about out of time, but I just want to, give you an opportunity to is there anything I've left out? Anything that you want to talk about? Maybe, things people didn't teach you that you wish you'd learned, and maybe it's a good thing or something to just be aware of in order to really make a good decision if this is a career for someone.
I think that to make a good decision. So I think if you want to go into theater and you want to have this as a career, I really think the passion for the show as a whole is really important to have, right? I don't think it is a place, especially when you're new and starting from the beginning. I don't think ego has a place in this, because if you're doing something to be recognized and not go, because really like it's serving the story, right? The story we're trying to tell. So I think if you really go into it and that's what you really care about is the audience like really being affected and hearing the story, then I definitely think it's the right career for you, because that is the like number one goal is like get the story, whether that's like, oh my gosh, they're in the wrong costume and they're in the wedding dress and they have to be in the wedding dress, or else there's this like specific moment that won't be communicated, like the things like that. I don't know, that was just a random example, but like, like whatever it is, or like this line, this person's microphone is out and they must say this line because it's a key piece, and how do we get that line heard, like, so I really think like serving the whole is how you, without being egotistical about it.
Absolutely.
I think that's the most important thing you care about. I think that is like how you know that the career is for you. And it's cool to be excited about it, right? Like it's cool to like be excited and love theater. And like I love working on Broadway. I love like I get to work on magic for a living, like that's so I really think like being passionate about telling the story is like number one. And I know I'm going to get made fun of for that because it's a dorky thing to say, but I'm not afraid to be a dork.
There you go. Absolutely. We are the same. Same tribe.
Yeah.
No, and I've always, I've kind of explained it before as if you look at a masterpiece, a painting, every stroke and every color of the piece is important. And if you take any of those out, it might never be a masterpiece, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even the subtle colors you don't notice are hidden stars. Boom, 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 boom. So that's great. Well, now you've seen some of our episodes, I know.
Yeah.
And so you knew this was coming. So we're down to our wall of wisdom from Gateway Mortgage. All right. It's your turn to give me some nugget of wisdom that I'm going to put on a piece of gaff tape. And we're going to put it up there and it will live in infamy until the trailer gets torn apart. But hopefully not soon. So what, Renee Levine, would you like to put on the Gateway Mortgage wall of wisdom?
Okay. Be a team player and serve the story.
Ooh, that is good. Be a team player and serve the story. I like it. Well done. All right, very good. Well, thank you. Thank you for being with us. This has been an incredible time. As always, we've learned from this. We've learned about you, which is just as important as us getting more knowledge, because you are a star and you're our star today. And so one of the things we always want to end with here is a Q&A. And we're going to transition to that now. I almost forget all that. See, it's just live theater, right? It's just like live theater. I have to remind myself, we want to get some questions in. We've got a few minutes. We don't have a lot of time. So we're going to come to this Q&A time here. And I'm going to call on some people and have them ask some questions. Let's see. Let's start with Gabrielle Herrera. Gabrielle, if you want to unmute your microphone and ask... why don't you you asked a bunch of questions, and I'll make sure Renee gets all of those and we'll answer to you offline, but I don't think we have time for all of them today. So why don't you pick your top two and you can unmute your mic and ask Renee.
Alrighty. Is there a musical that you haven't worked on that you really do want to work on?
Oh, yeah. Do I answer it right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Jump out there with an answer.
Yes, Les Miserables is my most favorite show in the whole world, and that would be my dream to work on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've mentioned this every episode or not, but that might be mine as well. Maybe Jean Valjean. Anybody out there wants to cast me? I'm available. I'm just sitting around. I know it. Ready to go. Just throwing that out there. Sorry, go ahead.
The next Broadway revival.
There you go. I'd be okay.
And what part of theater would you be working if you weren't working sound?
Oh, okay. So I've always been pretty interested in company management, which is not a thing that we have talked about, I don't think. So specifically company management for touring Broadway theater. And I know I said I was done with touring, but what the company manager does is really just is sort of in charge of everyone and is responsible for moving the cast, the crew, the band, anybody who's with that tour. They're responsible for moving them to different cities. They're responsible for checking them into their flights. They are on Broadway. They kind of are mostly just responsible for payroll and paying you. But I think I would be really good, because I traveled for almost a decade. I think I would be really good at moving big groups of people, and I think I would be good at finding fun things to do in those cities, because I did it for so long. So I think that would be the thing I would want to give a try. And payroll's cool. I could learn some payroll, so I think it'd be interesting to do a management, business management side of theater.
Absolutely. And you know what, people tend to like you if you're the one that give them money.
Yes, exactly. You show up and hand the paycheck, hey.
Absolutely. So I'll throw one last question in here. What is there a proudest moment, something you've saved the day, a time that just kind of sticks out to you that, hey, this one moment, man, that was a moment that I'm just incredibly proud of what I did?
Oh, well, there was I was working on the revival of Oklahoma recently, and my friend Bridget, who I've talked about her before, she's she's like a, somebody that I look up to. She was mixing the show and I was backstage. And one of the actors, that whole cast hardly ever came off stage the whole time. And the understudy was on for the role of Will Parker, and he was about to sing his big duet with Ado Annie. And there was no way he was coming off stage, and his microphone was just completely like sweated out and dead. And so Bridget was like, you got to go on stage with a handheld and hand it to him. And I was like, okay. So it was like horrible. Like I was so nervous and like my heart was just like pounding, so we made the swap happen. And I talked to the stage managers and I was like, when would be the best time? And they were like, all right, there's a big dance number. Sneak in as all these people are leaving and hand it to him. And like, oh my gosh, it was so nerve-wracking. But the actor was like, he was acting and he looked at me and he looked at the handheld and it was like, okay, I understand what's going on here. And he grabbed it and just started singing. And I just walked off. I think I was even wearing like a New York Rangers t-shirt. Like it was so ridiculous.
Awesome.
Like, yeah, it was, but we did it. And afterwards, me and Bridget were like, oh my God, I don't think anyone noticed too much. Like we were just free. Oh yeah. So
and
that
you started
was,
singing, supposing that I say that your lips are like cherries,
exactly,
the roses are berries, what you gonna do? I know that because I played Will Parker in Oklahoma.
So exactly the moment. Yep.
And,
yeah, so
and a little fun fact, the guy that played that part on Broadway Revival was named James Davis.
Yes, Jimmy, that's right.
That's right. See? I know. I looked because when I first went to the website and looked it up, I thought, Mom, I'm on Broadway. And oh wait, that's not me. Dang, they forgot to call me. Anyway.
But that's just my kind of thing. Like, like even if you kind of have to like embarrassingly go fix something on stage, it's serving the story, right? Like
that's right.
We got to get this song heard and that's what matters. And maybe no one noticed I was on stage.
That's okay. You deserve to be on stage some, Renee. You jump out there anytime you want. Speaking of that, now it is time for us what we always want to do, because you don't get to go out for the curtain calls, right? But you deserve to be a part of the curtain calls. So we want to applaud you. So everyone unmute your microphones and let's give Renee a round of applause. This is your standing ovation because you are a star, ma'am, and you deserve it. You deserve it for sure. So
thank you.
Very good. Well, I've got it right here. Be a team player and serve the story. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. We're going to put that right up here by everyone else on the wall of wisdom. And you are now a part of the Hidden Stars of Broadway, or of the theater wall of wisdom. Thank you, Gateway Mortgage. We got to say that because Michael keeps us on the air. He's a local guy that loves the arts and loves arts education. And you know what? We love you, Renee. So thank you for being a part of our family now. It's great to have you today.
All right. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much, Renee. Just incredible. Every time we have a great guest such as yourself, I'm just inspired anew. It never disappoints. There's always so much to learn, as you shared with us, from where you came from to where you are now. So thank you for that. And you know what? Thank you guys for joining us as always. I hope you learned something. I hope that you learned that you got to be a team player and you got to serve the story. So discover your story, and you know what, whether you're going to be a star on the stage or you're going to be a hidden star behind the stage, it doesn't matter. You're still a star, just like Renee and all of our guests always are. And that rhymed, and I didn't mean for it to, but that's okay. Speaking of stars, thank you to our featured school of the day, East Forsyth High School in Kernersville, North Carolina, and all you guys and Coach Tiffany Burgess. We just appreciate you sharing your shows with us, and we're going to see your seniors here in a minute. But first, let me just ask you guys to do something. If you enjoyed this and you enjoyed all of our episodes here on the Hidden Stars of Theater, down below, subscribe if you haven't. Please do it. Like and comment. Send me comments. My email will be down there if you got something to share. Maybe there's a position we haven't covered yet, and we've got some new ones coming up. Let me know what it is. Maybe you're interested in something we haven't talked about. Let me know, and I'll go find somebody that's doing that, and we can do something just for you. But until then, hey, like, subscribe, comment, come back, share this with your friends, tell everybody about the Hidden Stars of Theater, because we want everybody to know about our hidden stars. Love you guys. Be good, and we're going to see some seniors of 2020 from East Forsyth High School in Kernersville, North Carolina, and let's roll those now. Bye, guys.